She got a single father fired over a single mistake, yet he was the very person who helped her when her car broke down. How could one mistake cost a single father his job? And what happens when the person affected by that decision is also someone who once helped her? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you enjoy emotional stories filled with unexpected twists and meaningful connections, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Thank you so much for being here, watching, and supporting our channel. Your support means everything to us. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, do you believe one mistake should be enough to cost someone their job? Now, let's step into this powerful story and discover how it all began. Claire's pen struck the termination line while Ethan's frost-reddened hand still gripped the repair report. The shipment log was due at 6. I submitted it at 6:17. Then you missed the deadline. The conference room lights buzzed above a polished walnut table, and sleet tapped the dark windows like fingernails. Around them, 6 managers sat beside untouched coffee, watching Claire hold up the single-page report as if 17 minutes could measure a man's character. Ethan stood in a faded work jacket that carried the metallic smell of tools and furnace dust. A homemade keychain, blue beads threaded around the crooked word "Dad," hung from his canvas tool bag. The overnight warehouse dropped to 48 degrees, he said. The backup heater was cycling wrong. I stayed to stabilize it before the night crew arrived. Claire's jaw tightened. Were you authorized to delay the delivery report? No. Did you notify management first? There wasn't time. Beyond the glass wall, employees slowed as they passed. Claire saw their reflections gathering in the corridor and heard Richard Voss's words from that morning. Discipline only works when people see it enforced. Her quarterly review was 3 weeks away. The missed report had already reached the executive floor. She placed it flat on the table and aligned its corners with the wood grain. One employee does not decide which obligations matter. It wasn't a preference, Ethan said. People were clocking in, and medicine was waiting to ship. He could have argued. He could have described the sour odor near the intake vent, the rattling ignition, or the workers warming their hands beside equipment that should never have been running that cold. Instead, his gaze moved to the wall clock. At 4:30, his daughter's after-school program would charge another late fee. At midnight, the company health plan would end if Claire made this decision effective immediately. "This is your first late filing," one manager said carefully. Claire did not look at him, and it happened on a priority shipment. "Claire," Ethan said, lowering his voice, "write me up. Suspend me if you need to. But my daughter has a specialist appointment Tuesday." The ventilation system exhaled warm air across the room. Paper shifted. Someone set down a coffee cup without drinking. Claire's fingers paused over the signature box, but the faces behind the glass remained fixed on her, waiting to see whether her rules had weight. "Personal circumstances cannot change operational standards," she said. The pen scratched once. Claire Mercer signed her name. "Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." Ethan stared at the black ink, then slowly removed his identification badge. The plastic clicked against the walnut table. No accusation followed. No raised voice. Only quiet dignity, the kind that leaves arrogance with nothing to fight and everyone else with nowhere to hide. "Will my insurance run through the month?" he asked. Claire glanced toward Human Resources. The representative shook her head. "Coverage ends tonight." Ethan nodded once. He lifted his tool bag, and the little blue beads tapped softly against a wrench inside. In the hallway, his phone lit with 2 notifications: final notice from his landlord, and a reminder for his daughter's hospital appointment. He turned the screen face down before anyone could read it. As the elevator doors closed, Claire gathered her papers beneath the sterile white light. On the report Ethan had left behind, one grease-darkened note sat in the margin beside the delayed timestamp. "Night heat override. Do not reset until intake is tested." She covered it with her hand, slid the page into the folder, and returned to the meeting while Ethan stepped into the freezing parking lot carrying everything the company had allowed him to keep. By midnight, he would have no job, no insurance, and perhaps no way to keep their home. But before he could tell his daughter, the road ahead would force him to decide what his dignity was truly worth. Snow swept sideways across the service road, erasing the tire tracks beneath a hard blue midnight. 6 miles from the company, a pair of hazard lights blinked weakly beside a sedan half buried on the shoulder. Ethan drove past before the driver's door opened, and Claire Mercer stepped into the storm. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. The hospital reminder glowed on the passenger seat beside the final notice from his landlord, while the heater breathed lukewarm air that smelled of dust and old vinyl. Every sensible mile lay ahead of him. In the mirror, Claire raised her phone toward the empty road, but its screen went dark. Ethan pressed the brake. For one long second, his truck idled between dignity and bitterness. Then he shifted into reverse. "Stay inside," he called through the wind after stopping behind her. "I called roadside assistance. They won't reach me for 3 hours." "Then you shouldn't be standing out here." Snow had already gathered in Claire's hair and along the shoulders of her wool coat. She stared at the man beneath the pulled-low cap, seeing only a shadowed face, a canvas tool bag, and hands stained dark with machine grease. Ethan kept his chin tucked into his scarf. He had no wish to be recognized, thanked, or pitied by the woman whose signature had taken away his daughter's insurance. Yet leaving her there would not restore any of it. "Try the ignition," he said. The starter clicked once. Then silence. Ethan opened the hood, and the wind struck it like sheet metal dropped on concrete. Ice crusted the battery terminals. He worked by flashlight, bare fingers stiffening around the wrench as snow melted against his wrists. A gust tore through the open hood and sent Claire stumbling against the fender. Ethan caught her elbow, steadied her, then removed his work coat and placed it around her shoulders. "You'll freeze. I'm still moving. And you? Turn the key when I tell you." The cold bit through his flannel shirt immediately. He cleaned the terminals, tightened the loose ground cable, and shielded the connection with his palm while Claire climbed behind the wheel. "Now." The engine coughed, shuddered, then came alive. Warm exhaust rolled into the night, carrying the sharp smell of gasoline across the snow. Claire lowered the window. "At least tell me your name." Ethan closed the hood and picked up his bag. The handmade keychain struck the metal zipper, red beads, blue cord, for uneven white letters spelling Dad. "Get somewhere warm," he said. "That's enough." "It isn't." But Ethan was already walking toward his truck, his shirt whitening beneath the storm. He drove away without looking back, sacrificing the only coat he owned rather than surrender the quiet boundary protecting what remained of his pride. Inside the sedan, Claire wrapped the coat tighter and watched his taillights disappear. Only after reaching for the passenger seat did her fingers close around the small beaded key chain that had torn loose from his bag, and in the pulsing amber light, the child-made word rested silently in her palm. Morning light slid across the sedan's dashboard, pale and sharp against the crusted ice on the windshield. The heater clicked beneath the dash, pushing out air that smelled faintly of wet wool, engine grease, and the work coat folded on the passenger seat. Claire sat motionless in her driveway, the handmade key chain cupped in her palm. Red beads, blue cord, for uneven white letters, Dad. Her thumb traced a knot pulled tight by small fingers. Then the previous night returned in fragments. The scrape of a wrench against frozen metal, bare hands blackened with oil, a voice holding steady beneath the wind. "Get somewhere warm." The stranger's face had remained hidden under his cap, but his hands had not. Neither had the deliberate calm of a man who refused to make his hardship someone else's burden. Claire carried the key chain into company headquarters. Fluorescent lights hummed over the empty lobby, and melting snow squeaked beneath her boots. Near the security desk, a custodian was clearing the belongings left from terminated employees, a dented thermos, work gloves, a reflective vest. Ethan's canvas tool bag sat on top of the cart. Claire stopped. A short loop of torn blue cord hung from its metal zipper. "Where did this come from?" she asked. The custodian glanced over. "Maintenance locker. Ethan's things." "Was this attached to his bag yesterday?" "Always was." He lifted the torn loop between two fingers. "His daughter made it." He showed anybody who asked. The lobby seemed to lose its sound. Claire placed the beaded key chain beside the broken cord. The fibers matched perfectly, not merely in color, but in the frayed diagonal tear left when it had caught inside her sedan. She opened the folded coat. On the chest, beneath a smear of road salt, the stitched company patch carried one name: Ethan. "No," Claire whispered. The custodian looked at her. Something wrong. Her phone vibrated against the reception counter. A reminder filled the screen. Termination file. Final authorization required. 9 a.m. Until she approved it, Ethan's dismissal remained pending in payroll and benefits. The signature she had written before management had begun the damage. This second approval would make it permanent. Claire stared at the button. Last night, Ethan had known exactly who she was. He had recognized the manager who dismissed him, repaired her car anyway, surrendered his only coat, and concealed his name so she could not turn Grace into a debt. That quiet dignity carried more weight than every polished speech she had delivered about company values. "Call payroll," Claire said. "Tell them not to finalize anything. They'll need a reason." Claire took Ethan's tool bag off the cart and held it against her side. The rough canvas left a streak of dust across her sleeve. "Tell them the termination is under review." At 8:47, she entered her office and set the keychain beneath the brass lamp. Ethan's late report waited in the locked drawer where she had hidden it, his grease-marked warning still visible across the bottom. "Do not reset heating override until intake is tested." Outside the glass wall, the warehouse lights flickered once, then twice. A low mechanical alarm began pulsing through the building. Claire unlocked the drawer and pulled out the report. This time, she read past the timestamp. The alarm pulsed through the warehouse like a slow mechanical heartbeat, followed by the metallic slam of fire doors sealing the loading bays. Cold air spilled from the ceiling vents, carrying the bitter smell of overheated wiring and furnace dust. Claire reached the operations floor as the night supervisor struck the emergency stop. "Heating pressure is climbing. Shut down the burners." They won't respond. Under red warning lights, workers abandoned their stations while their breath clouded the 40-degree air. Conveyor belts shuddered to a halt, leaving insulated cartons of relief medicine motionless beneath the loading lamps. A dispatcher held up his tablet. "Those shipments have to leave by noon." Claire opened Ethan's report against a steel workbench, its pages trembling beneath her bare fingers. He had documented unstable intake pressure, carbon monoxide readings near the employee corridor, and a damaged damper that could force exhaust back into the building. The final line was underlined twice. "Manual override engaged TO protect night shift. Full intake test required before reset." "Who cleared the override?" Claire asked. The supervisor lowered his radio. Maintenance saw the termination notice. They assumed Ethan's settings were part of his mistake. A warning horn cut through the room. The carbon monoxide monitor above bay for flashed amber, then red. Claire did not wait for permission. She ordered the building evacuated, stopped every outbound truck, and called the fire department. Boots hammered across concrete. Forklift beacons painted the drifting vapor orange while nearly 60 workers filed into the snow, trading warehouse cold for wind that stung exposed skin. Minutes later, firefighters entered wearing breathing masks. Their instruments confirmed what Ethan had predicted. The damaged intake was starving the burners of clean air and pushing dangerous exhaust toward the night crew's work zone. One reset had turned his temporary safeguard into a building-wide emergency. By 10 o'clock, the loading bays stood empty. Pallets of insulin, antibiotics, and emergency respiratory medication remained behind locked doors, their delivery window narrowing with every frozen minute. The financial loss could be calculated. The clinics waiting across 3 counties could not measure delay so easily. Claire returned to the control room, where fluorescent tubes buzzed above the abandoned consoles. She spread Ethan's report beside the official incident log and traced the timeline with one finger. He had left his delivery paperwork unfinished at 6:03. At 6:05, he recorded the first pressure anomaly. By 6:17, the exact length of his so-called failure, he had isolated the faulty burner, checked the employee corridor, and engaged the override that kept the night shift from breathing poisoned air. 17 minutes. Not negligence. A choice. He had accepted a stain on his record because stopping to explain would have meant leaving the system unsecured while workers arrived. Claire lifted the termination order from her folder. Her signature looked darker beneath the white control room lights. Ethan had prevented the emergency she had created by removing him. Her phone rang. Richard Voss's name filled the screen as the dispatcher called from the doorway. If those trucks aren't released within 2 hours, the relief contract is breached. Claire answered. Voss did not ask whether anyone had been hurt. Contain the report, he said, and make sure Ethan remains the cause on paper. Outside the glass, the first refrigerated trailer was being turned away. Claire looked from Ethan's grease-marked warning to her own signature. Come to the conference room, Voss said. You have 30 minutes to decide which record survives. Cold fluorescent light washed across the conference table, turning the steel edges pale as ice. Beyond the sealed windows, diesel engines idled in the snow, their low vibration trembling through the floor while the bitter smell of burnt dust still clung to the heating vents. Claire entered with Ethan's report beneath one arm. Richard Voss remained seated at the far end, his silver pen aligned beside a blank incident form. 17 minutes late, he said. That is the official cause. It isn't the truth. It is the version that protects the contract. Claire placed Ethan's grease-marked warning beside the form. Water from her boots darkened the carpet, and the wall clock clicked through the final minutes Voss had given her. On the other side of the glass, dispatchers rerouted refrigerated trucks carrying relief medicine while red emergency lights swept across their strained faces. Voss tapped the signature line. List Ethan as negligent. Maintenance reset his override. The warehouse shut down, and no one above this floor needs the details. Claire did not reach for his pen. Instead, she opened Ethan's report to the time-stamped entry describing the damaged intake, the carbon monoxide readings, and the night crew scheduled to arrive. He secured the system before they walked in. He is already gone. Because I fired him. The ventilation fan rattled overhead, pushing cold air through the room. Voss leaned back, the leather chair creaking beneath him. You made a disciplinary decision. Do not turn it into a confession. Claire looked at her termination order. Her signature had cost Ethan his wages, his health insurance, and the specialist coverage his daughter needed. The paper felt thin between her fingers, yet it carried the weight of a locked door. Approve the incident statement, Voss said. Your quarterly record remains intact. Your position remains intact. The board sees a maintenance employee who failed. And if I refuse? The board sees a manager who endangered a contract and admitted incompetence. For several seconds, only the trucks could be heard outside, brakes hissing in the frozen loading yard. Then Claire pulled the blank form toward her. Voss slid his pen across the polished wood. Good. Claire turned the form over. On the clean side, she wrote slowly, pressing hard enough for the pen tip to scratch through the silence. I terminated Ethan before reviewing the safety action documented in his report. His delay resulted from preventing potential carbon monoxide exposure to the night shift. Responsibility for the premature termination and the operational consequences belongs to me. Voss's hand stopped halfway across the table. Do not sign that. Claire added the time, attached Ethan's original report, and signed her full name beneath the statement. You asked which record survives. She scanned the pages into the company's incident system, copied the safety committee and every member of the board, then pressed submit. A soft electronic chime sounded. Quiet. Final. Voss rose so quickly his chair rolled into the wall. You just put your job under formal review. Claire set his pen beside the false statement he had prepared. Then they can review the truth. Her phone vibrated before she reached the door. The board had acknowledged the report and scheduled an internal hearing for the following morning. One instruction glowed beneath the notice. Ethan must be contacted immediately, but after what Claire had taken from him, no document could guarantee he would agree to return. Wet snow hissed against the porch light, and a cardboard for sale sign trembled beneath the windshield wiper of an aging pickup. Through the open hood, the air smelled of cold metal and motor oil. Claire stopped at the edge of the driveway, still wearing Ethan's work coat over her office clothes. Only then did Ethan look up from the engine. His bare fingers tightened around a wrench. You found me. I came to apologize. Those aren't the same thing. The rented duplex behind him was narrow and dim, its paint curling from the porch rail. Near the door sat a pharmacy bag beside a hospital envelope, both weighted down with a child's red mitten. Claire removed the coat and held it toward him. You saved me last night after I took away your job. Ethan lowered the hood with a hollow metallic thud. My daughter made that keychain. I figured that's how. I know what the 17 minutes were for. Do you? Wind dragged powdery snow across the driveway. Somewhere inside, a humidifier hummed behind thin glass, steady as a sleeping breath. Claire placed the folded coat on the truck's fender. I submitted your report to the board. I accepted responsibility for firing you without investigating. There's a hearing tomorrow. Ethan's gaze moved to the coat, then to the for sale sign. Payroll canceled my benefits before your correction reached them. The hospital wants a payment by Friday. Claire glanced at the envelope. Is your daughter all right? She will be. His voice stayed quiet. Once I sell the truck. The truck was more than transportation. His tool chest was bolted into its bed, and rusted maintenance manuals filled the back seat. Selling it would pay the medical bill, but it would also take away the one thing that could carry him to another job. Claire opened her leather folder. I can restore your position tonight. Back pay, benefits, everything. No waiting for the hearing. Ethan took the papers. The porch bulb buzzed while his eyes traveled down the first page. Then his thumb stopped over a paragraph printed in smaller type. Confidential resolution. Claire said nothing. No public correction. No admission that the termination was improper. I returned quietly, and I agree not to discuss why I was fired. It's the fastest way to protect your insurance. It protects the company. It protects your daughter, too. That sentence landed harder than the wind. Ethan looked toward the window, where a small paper snowflake had been taped crookedly to the glass. For several seconds, only the pickup's cooling engine clicked beneath the hood. Then he tore the signature page once, cleanly, and placed both halves inside Claire's folder. I won't teach my daughter that truth becomes optional when the bill is high. You could lose the truck. I may. And the position may not exist after tomorrow. Then I'll find another one. Ethan lifted the hospital envelope and tucked it beneath his arm. I don't need pity, Claire. I don't need a private favor. I need my record to say what happened, that I protected those workers, filed the report, and was fired before anyone bothered to read it. Claire drew a slow breath, white in the freezing air. She removed the confidential agreement, dropped it into a slush-filled trash bin, and closed the folder. Then no private reinstatement. Ethan met her eyes. No, the truth goes into the hearing. All of it. Her phone rang. Richard Voss's name burned across the screen, followed by a board notice. Ethan's attendance was now formally requested at 8 a.m. Claire silenced the call and held the notice toward him. Will you come? Ethan looked at the truck he would lose, the hospital bill he could not postpone, and the coat he had given away without asking who deserved it. Then he took the notice. I'll come for my name, he said. Not for my job. The fluorescent lights hummed above the boardroom, bleaching the long walnut table in a cold white glare. Beyond the sealed windows, sleet tapped the glass, while the air carried the bitter smell of coffee and overheated wiring. At exactly 8 a.m., Ethan entered in a clean work shirt with his hearing notice folded inside one calloused hand. Claire Mercer rose first. Richard Voss remained seated. Let the record show Mr. Ethan is present, the committee chair said. Proceed. Open the maintenance log, Claire replied. The complete version. Voss's pen stopped clicking. A safety engineer projected the warehouse data onto the wall. Airflow readings, carbon monoxide levels, alarm timestamps. Red lines climbed across the screen until they reached the moment Ethan had installed the safety override and secured the damaged intake. What happens without that intervention? A board member asked. The engineer adjusted his glasses. Gas enters the night crew's work area. How many people? 38 employees were on shift. The ventilation system's recorded pulse filled the speakers. Low, mechanical, uneven. Ethan sat without reaching for the microphone, his hands resting beside the technical report no one had read before firing him. Then the engineer displayed the final timeline. Ethan's report had been 17 minutes late. The dangerous intake had been isolated 16 minutes earlier. So the delay was not negligence? The chair asked. No, the engineer said. It was the documented consequence of preventing a mass carbon monoxide exposure. Silence settled over the table. Claire slid Ethan's original report forward, its pages rough beneath her fingertips. His warning was filed before the termination meeting, she said. I saw the late timestamp. I did not read far enough to see what he had done. Voss leaned toward his microphone. The roadside incident is irrelevant to this inquiry. Claire removed the coat she had worn into the room and placed it across the back of her chair. A faint streak of grease still marked one cuff. It is relevant to my testimony. Ethan's gaze lifted. The night I dismissed him, my car broke down on an isolated road during the storm. A man stopped, repaired it, and gave me this coat. He left without telling me his name or asking for anything. She set the handmade keychain beside the report, its uneven beads clicking softly against the polished wood. The custodian confirmed this belonged to Ethan and was made by his daughter. The employee I fired without hearing him was the same man who helped me after I had taken away his wages, his insurance, and his ability to care for his child. No one moved. Even the projector fan seemed suddenly loud. Claire turned toward Ethan, not the board. You protected 38 workers when paperwork would have been easier. Then you protected me when walking away would have been justified. I put discipline above truth, and you answered that injustice with grace. Ethan reached for the microphone at last. I didn't stop because she was my manager, he said. I stopped because the road was freezing and she was stranded. The words carried no accusation, which made them land harder. A board member closed the termination file. Another removed Voss's prepared statement from the packet. The committee chair placed both palms on the table. Mr. Ethan, the evidence clears your record. The board will enter a formal correction. Voss's jaw tightened. Then we should discuss who remains fit to lead. Chairs creaked as every face turned toward Claire. The truth had restored Ethan's name. Now Voss intended to make her pay for speaking it. A radiator clicked behind the paneled wall, pushing out air that smelled faintly of dust and hot metal. Beyond the frosted windows, sleet scratched against the glass while Richard Voss straightened the silver cuff at his wrist. This can still be contained, he said. Contained? Claire asked. Correct Ethan's file privately. Keep the shutdown under his name. You remain manager. The relief contract survives, and the quarterly record stays clean. The committee chair leaned back, leather creaking beneath him. Ethan sat beneath the white ceiling lights with his rough hands folded beside the corrected termination file. He did not interrupt. Voss slid a prepared resolution toward Claire. The paper whispered across the polished table and stopped against her fingertips. Sign it, he said, or surrender everything you've built here. For several seconds, the only sound was the wet ticking of sleet against the windows. Claire looked at Ethan, then at the grease-marked coat and the child's keychain resting among the exhibits. His record was just cleared. Only by this committee. Voss lowered his voice. Corporate records can be revised. So can leadership, Claire said. Voss's mouth tightened. Think carefully. Claire opened the leather portfolio before her. Instead of lifting his resolution, she removed her company badge, her access card, and the brass office key she had carried for 7 years. Each object struck the table with a small, clean click. Then she pulled a blank sheet from the hearing packet. The pen scratched steadily across it. No tremor, no hesitation. When she finished, she signed her name and turned the page toward the committee chair. Effective immediately, I resign as company manager. The room went still. Voss reached for the paper, but Claire placed her palm over it. That is for the board. You're destroying your career over a maintenance employee. No, she said. I'm refusing to destroy his so I can keep mine. She released the letter, then pushed a sealed evidence folder across the table. Inside were Ethan's original report, the carbon monoxide readings, the intake inspection logs, her signed admission, and Voss's written directive ordering her to preserve the quarterly record by assigning blame to Ethan. The chair broke the seal. Paper edges rasped beneath his thumb. Voss's face lost color under the cold fluorescent light. That communication was privileged. It instructed me to falsify responsibility, Claire replied. The board now has the complete record. Voss rose so quickly that his chair rolled backward and struck the wall. You are no longer in a position to recommend anyone. Claire unclipped the final document from her portfolio. The safety committee requested a qualified candidate before this hearing began. My resignation does not erase my duty to answer. She placed Ethan's technical certifications, maintenance evaluations, and incident prevention record beside the evidence. I nominate Ethan to lead the safety department. Ethan's hands separated. Claire, you protected 38 people without authority, recognition, or certainty that anyone would believe you, she said. The company needs someone who treats safety as a responsibility, not a number on a quarterly report. I came here for my name, Ethan answered quietly. Not his office. Then don't take his office. Claire turned the nomination so it faced him. Build one worthy of the workers. The committee chair gathered the resignation, the evidence, and the nomination into one stack. Ms. Mercer's departure is accepted pending formal processing. Mr. Voss, remain available for review. For the first time that morning, Voss had no document left to hide behind. Claire rose without her badge, without her title, and without asking Ethan to forgive her. At the doorway, she paused as the chair moved Ethan's file to the center of the table. Mr. Ethan, he said, your record has been restored. The question now is whether you are willing to return on terms built around your judgment. Ethan looked at the nomination, then toward the frozen windows and the road leading home to his daughter. The power had changed hands. What he did with it would decide whether this was merely justice or a second chance. Snow hissed against the frozen windows while the committee chair slid a clean employment agreement across the oak table. The paper stopped beneath Ethan's grease-marked fingers, carrying no confidentiality clause, no probationary language, and no quiet demand for gratitude. Full back pay, the chair said. Benefits restored retroactively. Director of Safety, effective immediately, if you accept. Ethan read every line. Beyond the door, office phones rang and ventilation fans hummed through the building he had once kept safe without authority or recognition. And the night crew? He asked. Independent reporting access, the chair replied. No executive may bury a safety report again. My personnel record, corrected and distributed to the board. Richard Voss. Suspended pending review. 3 questions. 3 clear answers. Then the room settled into a silence no one tried to fill. Ethan took out his phone and called home. His daughter answered over the soft rattle of the duplex heater. Did they fix it, Dad? He looked at the signature line. They told the truth. Are you coming home? Soon. A small pause followed, warm against the cold glass. Then don't sell the truck. The corner of his mouth lifted. I won't. After ending the call, Ethan placed one condition beneath the agreement. Every maintenance employee would receive authority to stop operations when workers were in danger, without retaliation. The chair read it, uncapped his pen, and signed. Only then did Ethan add his own name. The decision changed more than his employment. His daughter's insurance was restored without interruption, the overdue medical charges were resubmitted, and the pickup no longer needed a for sale sign pressed against its windshield. Near the doorway, Claire stood in the plain wool coat Ethan had given her during the blizzard. Her badge was gone, leaving only 2 tiny pinholes in the fabric of her blouse. She did not approach until the committee members had departed and Voss had been escorted to another office for review. You accepted, she said. The work, Ethan answered. Not the favor. There shouldn't have been a favor. Her office key lay on the table beside the evidence she had surrendered. There should have been respect. Ethan picked up his daughter's handmade keychain, its plastic beads rough beneath his thumb, and held out Claire's coat. She shook her head. Keep it. It's yours. No, Ethan said quietly. It was help. Help doesn't create a debt. Outside, the storm had weakened to pale flakes drifting beneath the parking lot lamps. Claire walked beside him to the aging pickup, where the handwritten sale notice still waited behind the windshield. Ethan peeled it away, folded it once, and dropped it into the trash. The engine coughed before turning over, filling the air with the faint smell of gasoline and warm metal. Claire rested one hand on the passenger door, but did not open it. I can't undo what I cost you. No, Ethan met her eyes across the roof. But you told the truth when it cost you something. Start there. Weeks later, Claire returned to the company, not as his manager, but as an outside compliance specialist hired under Ethan's new safety rules, answerable to the workers whose warnings had once been ignored. On her first morning, she found no private office waiting for her, only a steel desk near the warehouse floor and Ethan's revised policy posted beneath bright fluorescent lights. He offered his hand. She took it. Around them, heaters rumbled, forklifts beeped, and 38 workers began their shift in clean, breathable air. Claire had once used power to make Ethan disappear. In the end, he used dignity to show her how a person should be seen.